Miss Tian Kim and this crew-cut guy had just met and suddenly fell in love. To confirm their fate, the crew-cut guy gave her a watch worth millions of dollars. However, as soon as he stepped into the elevator, he realized that he didn't even have her phone number. The moment he ran out, she got into a strange car. That car took her back to the country to take over the fortune of her father, who had just followed his own calling. But what her father left behind was an art museum that was at risk of closing down and a huge debt. Surprisingly, the person who lent her father money at high interest rates was the crew-cut guy who had just met her before. Like two perfect pieces, they decided to join hands to cooperate for a mutually beneficial relationship. However, what was waiting for them ahead was a despicable plot buried deep under the art museum. If we consider the love of money, then this guy is number 2, perhaps no one deserves the position of Sunday. In his mind, money is a fairy, a Buddha, a spring's resilience, a measure of human hearts. It's even more ridiculous when he is willing to enlarge all the different denominations of money and hang them all over the house where he lives. Every morning when he just wakes up from a dream, the first thing he has to do is to inhale the scent of money. Without money, he is like lacking natural vitality. His debtors, even if they are wearing torn shorts, must do everything they can to get money to pay him. Because if someone steals money from him, the young man will immediately go with 500 brothers to bother that person. The way these monkeys work is also quite unique in Benduong, when they do not destroy things like the usual gangsters, but spread out to the streets to cause trouble. Once when he went to collect a debt from a strange debtor, he was struck by lightning and cursed by love. Could a man who loves money like him sacrifice everything for the love of his life? Originally a young lady who bought things every day without looking at the price. Because her family was well off, Kim Dolly was able to study abroad in the Netherlands when she was young. Dolly's family never had a shortage of money because her father was the director of one of the largest art museums in Korea. Quite different from the money-loving guy Moha, young lady Kim Dolly is a person who lives her life for beauty. So it is common for her to hide in the library, weathering the sun and rain, passionately studying art. Moha is not so poetic because he is only a member of the newly rich class. His family started their business in clean pork, so they have the fortune they have today. Every move and gesture of Moha gives the person opposite the feeling that although he has money, he is both mean and mean. However, Moha is extremely satisfied with his long-standing rusticity. Every day, Moha invites chefs from all over to his house to cook. Because he is too lazy to go to restaurants, Moha always uses high standards to evaluate. This time, after tasting the soup prepared by the chef from premium ingredients, Moha immediately looked down on him arrogantly. Seeing that his talent is not recognized, the chef with a shiny head is also not obedient. In Moha's mind, other things are just ephemeral, only money is eternal. So he decided to enlarge all kinds of money and hang them in every corner of the house. Every day before stepping out the door, Moha has to cover his chest with the evil scent of money. Without money, life is so troublesome. That's why Moha always considered money as an art that was tied to his heart. One day, Moha was fed donkey meat by his brother just because he wanted to step into the upper class of the old tycoons. While his brother fed him donkey meat, because he also had a flight to the Netherlands to attend the signing ceremony organized by the International Pig Association. Sitting in the luxury cabin, Moha was immersed in a gentle but profound harmony. At this time, Moha still did not know that his originally peaceful life was filled with storms. Because at home, Mr. Bo had decided to lock all the banks owned by Moha. Being a newly rich guy, his nerves were a bit shaky. However, the incident happened so suddenly that he could not accept the shock. Moha and Dolly, the daughter of an artist, were originally two opposite poles of magnets. However, in an unexpected incident, the two of them met each other's eyes. Being a true art lover, Dolly did not like to attend art parties organized by the rich and powerful. However, after knowing that she would have the opportunity to admire the work she had always admired, she immediately changed her attitude. She wanted to attend that party to broaden her horizons and know more perspectives on art. One day, Dolly was at home when the manager asked her to pick up an art collector. It was known that this man was famous in the art world for his artistic achievements that were no different from those of famous artists. He was not only an important customer of the museum but also a Japanese of Korean origin. Just arriving at Manhwa Airport in the Netherlands, the famous art collector had a gentle collision. At this time, the assistant in faraway Korea called to remind Manhwa. Today, Manhwa not only attended the signing ceremony but also had to attend a rather solemn welcoming ceremony. Therefore, the secretary hoped that he would take this opportunity to create new relationships and at the same time foster feelings with old partners. Because only then could the signing ceremony be a complete success. In the distance, Dolly was standing waiting in the same welcome board as Mr. Jean. Because he didn't know English, the clever guy Manhwa thought she was the one sent by the Pig Association to pick him up. The moment he approached the beautiful Manhwa, he was attracted by Dolly's overwhelming aura. Looking at her beauty, he was stunned for 15 seconds by the overwhelming beauty she brought. Seeing Manhwa stop looking at him, Dolly thought he was the legendary Mr. Jean. Without even 5 seconds to think, she immediately took the suitcase from his hand. So where is the real Mr. Jean at this moment? Because he didn't see anyone coming to pick him up, he was alone in the middle of the crowded airport. Having just arrived, Manhwa couldn't help but exclaim. He never dreamed that the Pig Association would hold a welcoming ceremony in such a luxurious place. Hearing Manhwa say that, Dolly didn't show any doubt because 1,700 years ago, this place used to be a farm. Looking at the pair of Crocs that were a bit out of place in this space, Manhwa suddenly felt a bit shy. However, he couldn't just let the pair of cheap slippers reveal the slightly cheap temperament of a newly rich man. Manhwa and Dolly walked into the luxurious party as innocently as two crazy people. Thinking that Dolly was Mr. Jean, the famous art-practicing monk, the host's wife was very happy to see him. As soon as they met, she excitedly dragged him around to introduce him to everyone present. Hearing that, everyone immediately started to gossip and then enthusiastically ran over to shake hands instead of being shy. Each and every person wanted to greet him to create a social relationship. But with everyone being so enthusiastic, Manhwa didn't realize the problem that existed. After the greetings that were higher than the feast, of course, there was a comment that shocked people's hearts. The museum director's wife directly pulled Manhwa in front of a work of art and wanted him to leave her high-level comments. Because in terms of art, she only trusted him. From the beginning to the end, Dolly had always been by Manhwa's side, ready to be his interpreter 24/7. Hearing everyone standing nearby gossiping, Manhwa suddenly fell into a state of surprise. Looking at everyone's eyes, which were 3 parts expectant and 7 parts fatherly, Manhwa suddenly remembered his assistant's instructions. Before coming here, the assistant had reminded him to definitely build more relationships to make it easier to sign a contract. After taking a deep breath to calm down, Manhwa's comment program officially began. Listening to Manhwa's unique comments about Dolly's paintings, Binduong was so confused that he ran out of words. However, she skillfully filtered and helped Manhwa correct his comments professionally. Thanks to Dolly's translation, everyone present was completely convinced of the pig's leg guy's talent. It was also thanks to that Manhwa received the wholehearted encouragement from everyone. Just like that, one person dared to speak and one person dared to correct throughout the entire party. Although he tried to stop it, at the moment when everyone was looking forward to the work that Manhwa rated the highest, something unexpected happened. Manhwa looked around from the side and chose a work related to his field, causing everyone to look up. Then he confidently led everyone to the painting. You can see the pig in the painting with a long white body, short arms, and back. He confidently judged that the pig was a pig rolling a rope, causing Dolly to immediately collapse. Manhwa proudly asked Dolly to quickly translate for everyone to hear. With no other choice, Dolly helplessly tried to translate for everyone. Just like that, thanks to the celebrity effect, Manhwa proudly passed this test, leaving everyone still standing in front of the painting doubting themselves. After finishing the assessment, Dolly stared at his favorite painting, looking at it with great concentration. When Manhwa was curious about the value of this painting, Dolly said that if it was real, it would be at least 1 to 2 million euros. Manhwa was so surprised that his eyes widened and he accidentally choked on a grape in his throat. Seeing this, Dolly quickly used traditional method of rescue. And then the grape flew very accurately straight into the painting, pinning it on the eye of the beauty in the priceless painting. It also left a stream of sorrowful tears that shocked everyone at the scene. The director's wife angrily scolded Dolly and Manhwa. Dolly had no choice but to tell the truth that this was just a fake. This made the director's wife pale and the two were eventually chased out. Manhwa muttered that it was just a hole. Could it really be that they had to pay 3,200 billion? When Dolly told him that it was a fake, Manhwa was so happy that he wanted to thank God. However, Dolly was speechless because they had lost a sponsor with such great power. After a conversation, Dolly was shocked to realize that he had picked up the wrong person. She lost control and ran to the airport, but the Japanese monk was nowhere to be seen. Dolly was extremely self-reproachful for her stupid behavior, and Manhwa was comforting her. At this moment, Dolly suddenly realized that she grabbed Manhwa's hand and stood up. Manhwa immediately felt moved. The two of them did not know where the Japanese monk had gone, and Manhwa had also missed the welcoming ceremony of the Chi-Din Pig Breeding Association and went to a 5-star hotel to stay for a night. However, here he was informed by the receptionist that his black card had been locked. He felt extremely ridiculous. He kept changing cards, but still could not use them. He called home and found out that his parents were angry that he had secretly lent money to the museum, so they directly froze all of his bank cards. Manhwa was penniless abroad, which made Manhwa feel embarrassed. However, Manhwa did not want to appear miserable in front of Dolly, so he kept saying that he had solved the problem. He tried to calmly say goodbye to Dolly, but Dolly saw through everything. Seeing Manhwa hiding behind the pillar, Dolly smiled politely. Then she took the poor Manhwa back to her place. Dolly found a sumptuous dinner. Seeing Dolly busy looking for the whereabouts of the Japanese monk, Manhwa took her computer away. He earnestly advised Dolly to eat on time and sleep on time. Dolly tried a bite and was surprised that the taste was surprisingly delicious. This made Manhwa's vanity explode. During dinner, the two talked about art. Dolly heard that Manhwa also liked paintings. Every morning, she had to admire the painting hanging in her living room, which made Dolly very curious about it. Who would have thought that it was an enlarged military bill? Afraid of being seen through, he put on a serious expression and said it was an Indochina painting, which surprised Dolly with his rare attitude. Manhwa shyly said that if it was a coffee shop in the museum, it would have been a date. This made Dolly laugh out loud and the two of them happily laughed and talked until they finished dinner. After cleaning everything up, the two of them prepared to take a bath and rest. Manhwa was happily bathing when the power suddenly went out. On the other side, Dolly was undressing to prepare to take a bath, but due to the power outage, she accidentally tripped and fell. She screamed loudly. Manhwa hurriedly wrapped a towel around herself and groped her way out of the bathroom to look for Dolly, but tripped over the sweeper and fell. At this moment, the light in the house coincidentally turned on at the wrong time. Seeing Dolly with her clothes disheveled underneath Manhwa, Manhwa didn't know what to do. After stopping for a while, he told Dolly to close her eyes and not look at him. Then he rushed back to the bathroom and praised his muscles. He took Manhwa to the hotel as if he was about to leave, but Manhwa pulled her back and said that they must meet after returning home. He also stuffed his gold watch into Dolly's hand and told her to return it to him the next time they met. But when he got into the elevator, he discovered that he didn't even save her phone number. He hurriedly ran out to chase after Dolly and saw her crying and driving away. Manhwa was worried that something had happened to Dolly, so he and his secretary went everywhere to inquire about her information. Dolly seemed to have evaporated from this world and was nowhere to be seen. The secretary wondered if Manhwa was dreaming. But the gold watch worth billions on his hand was really nowhere to be seen, so she immediately concluded that Dolly was a scammer. Although Manhwa did not want to believe it, recalling a series of her previous actions seemed to confirm that she had intended to attack him. He thought that he had been clever all his life, but in a second he was foolish with a woman and was also deceived in love. Anger and sadness mixed together, the flame of love that had not yet been found was immediately extinguished. After returning to the country, he still could not recover. He painfully thought about how many bowls of chicken soup that watch could buy. The more he thought, the more heartbroken he became. Manhwa vowed to find her. He told his secretary to hire a private investigator for 10 times the salary. The stingy boss suddenly spent all his capital, so the secretary asked a question that was right in his heart. Are you looking for Dolly or your watch? Manhwa was hit in the right spot, saying that she was looking for the watch. So the secretary asked a question that was right in his heart. Are you looking for Dolly or your watch? Manhwa was hit in the right spot, saying that she was looking for the watch. Actually, the Dolly that Manhwa was trying to find after saying goodbye to her went straight back to the country to attend her father's ceremony. Her father suddenly passed away, making her extremely miserable. The young master of the Jean group came to the funeral and was followed by everyone. It turned out that he used to be Dolly's future husband, which is why everyone was so interested in him. Only then did Dolly learn that the art museum had been in crisis for a long time. She was preparing to sell all her assets outside the museum, including her house. She also had to face a huge inheritance tax. On the other hand, Manhwa was at the bank, confirming the amount of money in her savings. For him, money had to be held in his hand, and the number had to be on that savings to be called money. The secretary couldn't help but wonder how such a suspicious boss could be so bewitched by a strange girl. But Manhwa had accidentally passed by Dolly many times. When he returned to the company, he learned that the director of the art museum in the river that he invested in had followed the call of the king of hell. He was extremely panicked, but still tried to appear calm. He assured his angry father that he would absolutely not do business without profit. He would definitely get back both the capital and the profit to make his father open his eyes. But when he went out, he finally couldn't bear half of his brain and lied to himself. The secretary investigated and found out that under the director there was a girl with a very formidable background. In Manhwa's eyes, she was someone who had no ability to make money. He saw her as someone who relied on her parents and kept going to school instead of working. Suddenly Manhwa thought of a way. If he was a bookworm, he decided to bring a group of gangsters. He did so without knowing that the director's daughter was the Dolly he had always missed. At this moment, Manhwa was extremely confused and pulled his shirt from the secretary's hand to cover his face. But Dolly recognized the guy he had met in the Netherlands as soon as he saw him. The brothers around him started to jump up and gossip. To regain face, Manhwa started to torture his wife and yelled at Dolly not to approach him. The two of them were just a creditor and debtor relationship. He even had the heart to tell her to quickly return the money. Manhwa was full of enthusiasm as he led his brothers away, but before he could leave the museum, Dolly stopped him. She reminded them to buy an entrance ticket, and that everyone entering the library had to buy a ticket without exception. The secretary was very appreciative of Dolly's unyielding behavior. Sitting in the car on the way back to the company, the secretary started chatting about Dolly again. She had an engagement with Jean of the Sentry Group, but when they were about to get married, they broke it off. Manhwa couldn't hide his smile when he heard that, as if he had a chance. He thought that person was definitely a person without any sense of humor. Knowing that the man still hadn't let go and was still clinging to Dolly, even the monk's ceremony was arranged by him. Manhwa immediately felt uncomfortable and criticized him for just spending money to buy dozens of girls, but he was very sad inside. Manhwa was going crazy, her head was dizzy, and Dolly became the new director of the museum. On the first day, she was so busy that she didn't have any free time, and her cousin talked too much so that Manhwa sent someone to film the museum online so that it would be on the top search results. Artists and banks called one after another to ask if the museum was about to close. Dolly was so busy all day that she was exhausted and mentally exhausted that she walked out of the museum. Manhwa suddenly appeared in front of her, making Dolly so surprised that she couldn't stand. As a result, the two of them fell together in an awkward position, and their high heels broke because of that. Seeing the pitiful Dolly, Manhwa hurriedly ran to the car to get a pair of sparkling Crocs. Seeing Dolly wearing her slippers, Manhwa smiled with satisfaction. After taking Dolly to the mall, Manhwa always followed her silently. Dolly had to say 3 times in a row that she wouldn't run away, but as soon as she finished speaking, her ex-boyfriend appeared again. Dolly hurriedly went behind Manhwa and pulled him aside. When Manhwa reacted, she understood and willingly acted as her shield, not expecting that she would directly ignore her. The two of them went to a luxury store, but unexpectedly, the store clerk ran straight to Dolly to start a conversation. Dolly looked at a pair of high heels, but when she paid, she discovered that her credit card was locked. While she was feeling depressed, her ex-boyfriend walked by and took out his card. Dolly flatly rejected his good intentions, so she turned to Manhwa and said that he should pay. Manhwa then reacted quickly and hurriedly went up to pay. The two of them left the store, and the ex-boyfriend still wanted to find Dolly to chat with, but Dolly directly grabbed Manhwa's wrist and left. But Dolly immediately let him go and apologized. She also said that she would definitely pay him back and then walked away without looking back. Dolly looked towards the riverbank and was lost in her memories. A week before the wedding, Tae-jin did not bring Dolly to the family's benefit, so she begged him to abandon her. Now she was in debt and her house was about to be auctioned off. She recalled the beautiful memories of being with her father here. She was extremely reluctant to let her tears fall like rain. Dolly did not know how she could overcome this difficulty. The next day, Manhwa's subordinates repeated the same old trick to get stuck in the museum. Because this idea was his, Manhwa could not stop them. At this time, Dolly went to Manhwa and quickly turned away, not daring to look at her. The chefs had to show off the tickets in their hands and laughed crazily. At this time, the other creditors of the museum also came to them without saying a word and directly took the things in the office away. Manhwa saw Dolly being bullied and could not sit still anymore. While the two of them said that Manhwa's shirt button was pulled off to reveal a tiger tattoo on his chest, everyone was shocked and their eyes widened, and Manhwa immediately became unhappy and arrogantly declared that he was the new director of this museum. At this time, a female employee shyly handed over a bill. It could be seen that each bill cost more than several hundred million, and there was even a debt of tens of billions. Manhwa was impulsive and now regretted it. The father knew that his son not only could not get the money back but also incurred more debt. As soon as he stepped forward, he started to beat Manhwa madly to vent his anger. When he calmed down during dinner, the father suggested that the person who valued money above all else buy back the museum because several companies were already targeting him. In the meeting room, Dolly was discussing strategies with Manhwa's staff, but suddenly he barged in, pretending as if nothing had happened, telling everyone to continue the meeting. Then he calmly took a box of yogurt and licked the lid of the yogurt. Seeing everyone's strange looks at him, he realized that his thrifty behavior had been deeply rooted in his sister. Knowing the current difficulties of the museum that had to conduct free education for disadvantaged children every quarter, Manhwa was immediately dissatisfied. Dolly believed that as long as they could attract a certain amount of investment, everything could be solved. Manhwa strongly criticized them for being too concerned with charity and not paying attention to profits. He also reminded Dolly to look at the current situation clearly. She was no longer the rich young lady she used to be, but a poor person who couldn't even afford a pair of high heels. The provoked Dolly promised to pay Manhwa 40 billion within a week. She originally planned to do it by selling artworks, but the current market situation was extremely unfavorable. Moreover, the museum could not even pay its employees' salaries. She was helpless and could only keep running outside to raise funds, and because of that, she saw the coldness of this world. The bosses that her father had helped all avoided her, and wherever they went, they would surely wait. She went to a jewelry store to sell her jewelry at a cheap price. Coincidentally, Manhwa was shopping for a suit, and he followed Dolly all the way to a small bar. Dolly used the alcohol to think deeply about himself, thinking about the scene. She recalled the warm scenes of her childhood and could not stop crying. Manhwa went up to greet her and saw her face full of tears, but did not know what to do. Dolly was confused and explained that she was protecting her eyes. Seeing the luggage next to Dolly, Manhwa thought that she could not pay and prepared to run away. It turned out that she had sold her house and was preparing to rent a hotel. Manhwa thought that Dolly could stand on his own 2 feet in the Netherlands. Based on her intelligence and education, she could completely sell the museum and leave leisurely. She was a bit drunk and said while pinching Manhwa's face, he was a handsome guy that even Devansy didn't know. Manhwa received the compliment and felt like a deer was running around in a daze on the spot. After that, Manhwa took her to the hotel and saw Dolly enter the room with her own eyes, before leaving with peace of mind. But after he left, she still returned the hotel room that he had booked in exchange for money and chose to stay at a small motel, but ended up being broken into by a thief. She used all her strength to cling to the thief and begged him to return the money, but was beaten up. When Manhwa took off Dolly's sunglasses, Dolly's face was covered with red frost. Manhwa was extremely heartbroken and blamed her for why she would risk her life for that little bit of money. Dolly also hated herself for being stupid and mean, and the suffering she encountered was not only that. The ignorant British man who was always eyeing the museum colluded with an internal colleague to spread false rumors about her. The press said that when Dolly went to a motel with a man, she was robbed. They also condemned Dolly for not being able to pay her employees while she was covered in designer clothes. Not only that, she also has no ability to handle public relations. Faced with all this, Dolly was not angry but decided to fight back. She prepared to take the opportunity to hold a press conference. Taejin knew about Dolly's situation and said that he was willing to pay the debt for her and at the same time told the reporter. Dolly did not accept his good intentions, but she hoped that he could help her with something. Dolly appeared at the press conference wearing a fashionable outfit. Facing the questions from the reporters, she calmly answered each question. There was even a reporter who told her to take off her sunglasses. When everyone thought that she would lightly avoid the problem, Dolly bravely took off her glasses to reveal her wound to everyone. Seeing this shocking wound, everyone was startled. Si-hyun bought a dozen reporters to question the man who spent the night with Dolly at the motel if he was also injured, but Dolly did not answer. While everyone was chattering, the reporters received a video clip extracted from the motel's camera. It clearly showed that Dolly was alone that night and there was no one who was her love interest. Only then did Dolly's reputation clear. Surprisingly, this press conference pushed Dolly's jewelry and branded clothes, along with information related to the museum to more than 10 search trends. The staff could not believe that this was extremely beneficial to the museum's exhibition organization. All of these things were within Dolly's predictions. At this time, she was poor and wanted to show off her talent, so she could only temporarily rely on Taesun's power. The branded jewelry on her body all came from the Centauri Group store, which was urgently adjusted according to Dolly's special request. Not only did it wash her edible nest, but it also promoted the museum. Manhwa on the other side was watching the surveillance camera and saw the scene of Dolly being harmed. He was extremely unhappy with the fact that everyone was only interested in the jewelry and not paying attention to the injured person. The secretary still thought that these things were all arranged by Manhwa. Manhwa suddenly felt that since the museum director followed the call of the King of Hell, everything had become very strange. The bank and other companies that had cooperated for 10 to 20 years, as promised, all turned their backs on acquaintances. Manhwa couldn't help but suspect that someone was behind the scenes. The scene changed to Manhwa, who was in a one-sided love and was still lying about how to send a message to Dolly. In the end, Manhwa decided to ask Dolly if he liked sashimi, but because of a typo, he texted that he liked Dolly. Manhwa was startled and threw his phone away. After calming down, he hurriedly sent a series of messages to explain, but from beginning to end, Dolly did not reply to him even once. Manhwa was afraid that Dolly would misunderstand that she liked her, so she finally called Dolly, but no one answered. The house upstairs also had a phone that was ringing, so it turned out that Dolly lived upstairs from Manhwa's house. Police officer Gwanze was someone Dolly's father had adopted and helped a lot. He had rented Moha's room and left Dolly with no place to go temporarily. Dolly saw the message after she had finished bathing, but she only read it and smiled without replying. Moha couldn't sleep all night because he was waiting for Dolly's reply. He couldn't sleep, so he went for a walk in the museum and unexpectedly discovered that there was a lot of trash in the large room that hadn't been cleaned up. Early in the morning, Dolly came to the office and saw Moha sleeping on the sofa. She carefully picked up his shirt and covered him with it. Moha was awakened, so she pulled Dolly and asked her why she read the message, but didn't reply. In this awkward position, both of them were extremely embarrassed and quickly separated and sat on the sofa listening to Moha's complaints. Dolly explained that it was actually because it was too late that she didn't answer him. Dolly apologized for reporting to Moha the day he was injured, but Moha still pretended to be upset. Pretend like nothing happened, isn't that life? He teased Dolly and made Moha laugh at the moment. Moha was just like an idiot. Byung suddenly drove up and told Dolly that something had happened. Artist Hong's work had disappeared. Everyone was in a panic. Finally, the camera captured Moha destroying Artist Hong's work. Each piece was neatly packaged and put in place, and finally the work was found next to the umbrella. Everyone was heartbroken and turned to blame Moha for looking at this broken umbrella. Moha said that if you asked passers-by, they would all think this was a horn. Sabong was boiling with anger and rushed to argue with Moha about conceptual art and said that he could not work with someone who insulted art. While he and everyone else were arguing, Artist Hong heard Moha making negative comments about this work of art. Seeing that, Dolly quickly apologized to Hong Jae-seon and killed her. Artist Hong almost couldn't stand up and saw that her work looked like a pile of discarded horns. She was so angry that she left. Dolly quickly ran after Artist Hong to ask for forgiveness, but Hong Jae-seon said that he had been eaten today. She begged Dolly to restore her precious works to their original form and then left in anger. The exhibition that had been prepared for a long time was about to come, but Artist Hong did not pick up her phone. Seeing Dolly's expression, Moha realized the seriousness of the problem. At this time, Dolly received a phone call from the police station informing her that the man who robbed her money had been arrested. The moment she saw him, Dolly recalled the horrific incident that night and her fear arose again. The police rushed in to teach him a lesson but were stopped by the police next to him. He kept shouting in revenge against Dolly, but Moha suddenly flew straight to kick him. Hearing his insults, Moha could not help but want to punch him. Dolly hurriedly went forward to hug him from behind and his eyes started to drink again. Seeing the suspect still being very arrogant, Dolly, who was always elegant and calm, also went crazy, which surprised everyone. Dolly seriously accused him and listed each punishment based on just one word from the victim himself. Perhaps he would have to spend the rest of his life in jail. This was what scared him and he obediently sat down for questioning. When he learned that all his money was involved in gambling, Dolly finally went crazy. Not caring that she was a woman, she stepped forward and punched and kicked him. That money was her hard-earned salary as an employee. Gontak bandaged the wound on Moha's hand. When Dolly walked out, she was very surprised to discover that they knew each other. Only then did Dolly learn that Moha was Gontak's landlord, and only then did Gontak remember that Moha had said that the noise from the upper floor kept him from sleeping. Dolly quickly covered Gontak's mouth, hoping that Moha would care more, then dragged Gontak away. Moha asked Dolly to return to the museum to settle the matter. Dolly had no choice but to push Gontak away and turn to Moha. At this time, Moha arrogantly showed off his sovereignty. On the way back, Dolly said many good things about Gontak, making Moha jealous and saying that anyone who met them would think they were a couple. After listening, Dolly just smiled awkwardly while Moha talked about the tiger tattoo on his body. Unexpectedly, Dolly had already known that it was just a tiger sticker with several missing teeth and toenails. Dolly then recounted the night they had a power outage in the Netherlands, and that he had no tattoos on his body. Moha doubted that she still remembered so clearly and confidently presented herself as a living sculpture. He couldn't help but continue to tease her, truly the #1 Saint High in Korea. On this side, Taejin had gone everywhere to ask about Moha's family situation. His family used to be a nouveau riche, but now it had become a business. Everyone in the family has limited knowledge and only cares about money. As long as the debt is paid off, Moha and Dolly will never meet again. Taejin makes an appointment to meet Moha, the secretary, who knows at a glance that he definitely wants to pay Dolly back. She tells him what he wants to ask Dolly for and is happy to confirm the unpaid debt. Moha is jealous, he doesn't even want to see it, but if his rival wants to meet him, Taejin must come here. The scene changes as Moha holds his breath and slowly opens the artwork he spent more than 320 billion to buy. Seeing a golden pig-shaped USB, he is so angry that he trembles. Moha walks shakily to the window, his heart broken. At this moment, Dolly calls Moha and quickly grabs the phone. The artist's participation in the exhibition has been resolved quickly, so Dolly invites Moha to attend the opening ceremony tomorrow. In fact, Hong Jae-seon can participate in the exhibition, thanks to Moha. To make up for his mistake, he personally went to apologize to artist Hong. He didn't say much, but knelt down, causing artist Hong to almost choke on her water. When she learned that Moha had spent 100 million works in the series Living People and Garlic Raising People to appease her anger, Dolly, who didn't know about it, also went to artist Hong's house to apologize. She said that if she participated in this exhibition, the museum would hold a solo exhibition for her every year. However, Hong Jae-seon wanted her to kneel down as a way to test her sincerity. When Dolly was about to kneel down, she said she was just joking. At this time, Sabong received a call to inform her that the third work in the series Living People and Garlic Raising People had been delivered. At this time, both of them learned that artist Hong had agreed to participate in the exhibition. When she asked Dolly what kind of person Moha was, Dolly quickly apologized on his behalf and said that he was a good person. Hong Jae-seon felt that the two of them were very compatible, an inexplicable harmony. This time, Moha paid close attention to each of Hong's works. Seeing the person carrying the work, he almost tripped and fell, his heart almost jumped out of his throat, and he carefully received it. Who would have thought that today's precious item would be a pair of shoes? The exhibition was being prepared. After Dolly meticulously put on her makeup, she and her colleagues went to the entrance of the gallery. Unexpectedly, when the exhibition started, no one had come. The artists complained, but instead sat there, watching the jokes, making Dolly extremely disappointed. When the colleagues were about to take out their phones to call the guests, a few Mercedes cars suddenly arrived. Taejin gradually entered the ceremony, followed by the members of the council, the celebrities, and the famous people. Many famous people and big names gathered at the exhibition hall. Seeing the bustling atmosphere, Taejin touched Dolly's waist and led her to meet and get to know each guest. During the exhibition, Dolly was a bit absent-minded, she kept looking at the entrance. When Moha arrived at the opening ceremony, he suddenly discovered that his father, stepmother, and brother Ki Chaeon had all arrived. He was not pleased at all, telling the whole family that when they entered the hall, they would pretend not to know each other, then he left with a frown. Dolly finally saw Moha coming, which made her happy. Just when she was about to speak up and ask in Mahai, she was pulled away by Cheeky. Not only that, Cheeky was extremely intimate and touched him to adjust his skirt. Dolly was extremely disappointed when he saw this, but Cheeky still dragged Moha to meet an important person. Dolly saw this scene and was jealous. Cheeky brought Moha to introduce him to her father, while Ki Chaeon also followed to introduce his father to Insangtae. Moha's stepmother recognized Cheeky as the one who sold her the painting. The two had had conflicts before, so now they met very awkwardly. Taejin took the initiative to go to Moha and offered to help Dolly pay off his debt. But this time a money-loving person like Moha was not moved at all, because he did not accept alms. At that time, Taejin felt that Moha was very difficult to deal with. When Dolly explained Hong Jae-jeon's work to the distinguished guests behind, a noise was made that made the crowd stir. It turned out that the stepmother saw Moha lying in the coffin and shouted to pull him out because she felt that he was cursing her. Dolly rushed over to explain that artist Hong had arranged for him to be a model for the eternal departure in the coffin. And Sang-tae looked at his daughter Tae-jin with dissatisfaction, also speechless, looking at Manhwa, only he felt like he was making art. After the ceremony ended, Dolly stayed behind to deal with the chaos. At this moment, she seemed to see her father's figure. Her father had taught her to speak softly in the gallery, listening carefully to the words that the work wanted to convey to the world. At this moment, Dolly missed her father so much that suddenly a crowing sound came from afar. Dolly followed the direction of the sound and discovered Manhwa had fallen asleep in the coffin. She hurriedly went to wake him up. Manhwa suddenly sat up and they both hit their heads together. Manhwa talked about his feelings. He thought the coffin was dark and cold, but when he entered, he felt warm and comfortable. He remembered the cold feeling of the pen when he buried his biological mother. Her eyes were red and lifeless. Thinking of his mother, who suffered from a painful illness but always reminded him to eat on time. Seeing Manhwa in pain and tears, Dolly held his hand and comforted him, saying that his mother would always protect him and cheer him on. After saying that, Dolly couldn't help but take the initiative to kiss Manhwa. But immediately after that, she changed to holding Manhwa's hand and quickly left. Manhwa felt uncomfortable while brushing his teeth and was still resentful. He suddenly realized that he didn't want to brush his teeth today. Returning home, Dolly was lost in thought, wondering why he kissed Manhwa. It was because of male tears and maternal love. Thinking that it might be because of love, Dolly immediately woke up. Early in the morning, Dolly came to the showroom and their eyes met, very sincere. There were many ways to go, but both of them chose each other's direction. The secretary looked at him with itchy eyes and directly pushed Manhwa aside. In the classroom, hearing words similar to kissing, Manhwa immediately reacted very strongly. Everyone stopped and froze, and the secretary hurriedly reminded him that this was a children's coffee party. Faced with such an embarrassing scene, Dolly was equally speechless. When Dolly returned to her office, she was so embarrassed that she wanted to bang her head against the wall. She didn't understand his behavior in the meeting. Dolly said that maybe yesterday she was too tired and made a temporary mistake, which caused such a thing. She hoped that the two would return to their relationship as creditor and debtor. Manhwa's face suddenly darkened because for him, this was not a mistake. He hoped that Dolly would listen carefully to his heart. Manhwa's approach made Dolly blush and at some point, Manhwa had accidentally captured her heart. In the car, Dolly recalled his humorous tone and lecture during the meeting, and she couldn't help but laugh out loud. On this side, Manhwa was called home to eat, and the whole family discussed it during the meal. They completely couldn't understand the so-called works of art. Let people lie in the coffin and then clap their hands to try. Seeing the whole family mocking Dolly's art exhibition, Manhwa was very angry. He suspected that they had no feelings at all. Did everyone not see something stirring in their hearts? Everyone in the family openly disdained and continued to mention Manhwa's marriage. His father remembered that day at the exhibition. Manhwa was lonely and kept staring at Dolly. Right when he and Zach Hai were intimate, Dolly happened to see it. Manhwa's father saw that both of them had feelings for each other, so he deliberately winked at Manhwa. He also said that marriage is definitely to marry the woman you like. The scene changes when Manhwa returns home. Suddenly a loud noise makes him startled. Manhwa touches the shoulder of a person dressed in black. This person looks very familiar. Seeing something unusual, Manhwa goes to check out the tenant's room. But he finds the door unlocked and the room in the house is extremely messy. He steps inside and is suddenly attacked by Dolly. Seeing Manhwa, Dolly's tense heart finally relaxes. After both of them call the police for Dolly's safety, Manhwa tells her to pack up and temporarily stay in her house. However, she doesn't want to bother him for another minute. With Manhwa's persistence, Dolly finally moves into his house. She finally witnesses what he said about enjoying Oriental paintings every day. After learning that it turned out to be a large Korean 5,001 coin, Dolly froze for 50 seconds. She looked at the ceramic jar on Dolly's table and examined it carefully. Manhwa told her that it was just a large jar of sauce. In fact, Dolly's father wanted to thank Manhwa for giving the museum a lot of money, so he gave him the ceramic jar, but Manhwa's father used it like a trash can. Manhwa suddenly realized that something was wrong, so he quickly put it away. Then he made a sumptuous meal for Dolly. Before the meal, Dolly mentioned that she and the golfer lived together. After listening, Manhwa did not care and answered her explanation. Dolly said that he could help her worry less about the electricity and water bills. Manhwa was speechless. Seeing Dolly's face, Manhwa was furious and had nowhere to vent her anger. Dolly took the initiative to wash the dishes, but created a sink full of soap foam. Manhwa went to help her, but ended up getting foam all over her head. Dolly quickly wiped it for him, but it kept getting worse. He took the opportunity to grab her wrist and said in a pampering manner, "You're like that, how can I not worry?" The ambiguous atmosphere surrounding the two of them made both of them feel embarrassed. In the middle of the night, Dolly was awakened by a nightmare and cried like rain because she missed her father. Dolly apologized for kissing Manhwa last time and then ran away. She understood his feelings, but the pain before made her afraid to love someone with all her heart again. Hearing her thin confession, Manhwa respected her choice. The person in black who entered Dolly's house was the museum employee who had been threatened by Shi-hung for a long time. Because he had the power to make her sit on the stage, the technician now forced her to find something like a stamp that was almost caught by Dolly. She didn't want to do dirty tricks for Shi-hung anymore. Realizing that Dolly's father's eternal departure was related to him, she scolded him for not being human. The new ruler returned home in the morning but saw Dolly coming out of Manhwa's house, making both of them extremely embarrassed. When the ruler returned to his room to clean up, he discovered a fallen earring on the ground. When he arrived at the museum, Dolly discovered that Nagong-do had a wound on her ear. She said that because she often used the same perfume that Dolly smelled last night, she suspected Nagong-do. Sabong said that she was personally recruited by Dolly's father, but she didn't have any proof. The art camp project was officially launched, and the virtual children flocked to the museum. The two rivals met again. Manhwa stirred up the atmosphere in the living room so that the children could cook very carefully. Seeing the interaction between Dolly and Manhwa, Tae-jin was filled with jealousy and envy. After the event, Nagong-do suddenly disappeared, causing everyone to speculate about her whereabouts. At this moment, Hong-di suddenly interrupted everyone's train of thought. It turned out that Manhwa's necessary cooking utensils were all left in the museum. On the other side, Manhwa met the artist Hong on the other side of the street, Mrs. Tae, teasing Manhwa, asking if he loved Dolly. Manhwa's eyes widened in surprise, wondering why Mrs. Tae could read her mind. This scene was heard by Chuk-hai, so it turned out that the person she always liked Dolly. Chuk-hai angrily stood behind Manhwa, stalking the shark to confirm Manhwa's feelings for her. She boldly said, "Let's sleep together." Manhwa suddenly sprayed water straight onto her face, then he said that it was impossible between the two of them. She finally couldn't help but ask him if he had someone in his heart. However, Chuk-hai was afraid of hearing the answer, so she quickly ran away. Manhwa still chased after her, apologizing for his actions that made Chuk-hai misunderstand. He also took this opportunity to tell her that he had someone he liked. Chuk-hai was heartbroken, crying and hitting Manhwa. Seeing her tears flowing, he also took the opportunity to hug her and comfort her. Who would have thought that this scene would be accidentally seen by Dolly when she was delivering cooking utensils? A pain arose in her heart, she left the bag somewhere and walked away in despair. Dolly muttered to herself, "What am I?" A moment of absent-mindedness almost caused her to be hit by a car. When she woke up, she heard a call from Tae-jin, and she agreed to attend the sponsorship discussion with him. Unexpectedly, Tae-jin took her to Manhwa's potato chip shop to discuss business. The company was frantically buying land around the museums. The latest news was that they were in the process of buying new ones. A construction company. After listening, Dolly was extremely surprised and Tae-jin hoped that she would not be fooled by Manhwa. At this time, Manhwa personally brought the rice, while Dolly looked at Manhwa with mixed emotions in her heart. Manhwa's appearance did not stop Tae-jin from talking. A song similar to Dolly's information and her information. That is a song similar to her information. That is a song similar to her information. Dolly hurriedly stepped forward to stop and accused Tae-jin not to insult Manhwa. Tae-jin reminded Dolly to stay calm because Manhwa's company would sue for the last creditor's right to buy back the art museum at a low cost. Manhwa was the enemy and he himself was on her side. Dolly was busy constantly recalling the moments of contact with Manhwa and still did not want to believe Tae-jin's words. She called Manhwa to hear his explanation, but Manhwa did not answer. On the way, she happened to see Manhwa's car passing by her without stopping. Dolly looked disappointed. When Manhwa got home, she asked about her father's construction company. Seeing him hesitating, Manhwa knew clearly. Manhwa told them that building a company was not an easy task, but a political activity that needed to attract more people. Her brother couldn't stand it anymore and said that he was also an idealist who was always looking for connections. His father also told him that this was a reliable human resource survey. Manhwa made his stance clear that he just wanted to get his investment back and warned his father to stop as soon as possible. His father knew that Manhwa did it for Kim Dolly, but he didn't want to miss this opportunity to make money. And Sang Tae was at most just an errand boy above him, and there were others, but he didn't know exactly who they were. Jin Baek-gun seemed to know the inside story but refused to say anything. When Manhwa returned home, he saw Kim Dolly waiting at the door. Dolly apologized to Manhwa for Tae-jin's loss during the day, but this made Manhwa even angrier. Since he was 10 years old, he had been able to serve wine to all kinds of guests and had received gifts. He didn't care about daytime matters at all, because Tae-jin wasn't qualified. After saying that, he led his men away, but Kim Dolly still wanted to ask about Manhwa's construction company. Kim Dolly's suspicion of him made Manhwa even more heartbroken. Manhwa told her that it was his brother who did it and that he only wanted to get his 20 billion back. In his anger, Manhwa said that if he didn't trust him, he should return the money immediately and then go beg Tae-jin. Dolly angrily turned on Manhwa, who wanted to hit him again, but Manhwa grabbed Dolly's arm. He pressed Kim Dolly against the wall and then couldn't help but kiss her. He asked Kim Dolly if he was wrong this time. Kim Dolly slowly shook her head. The two kissed and the car sank, confirming each other's intentions. After the two calmed down, they began to sort out the recent events. It was like a long-standing plot to hope that the museum would close, because only then would it be beneficial for land development. Kim Dolly recalled the businessman-politician who appeared in the art exhibition. Tae-jin's image appeared in her mind. Kim Dolly was frightened by her own crazy idea. She turned back to get the lollipop in the microphone, then suddenly remembered the documents she hadn't opened yet. After opening them one by one, what appeared before her eyes was a bag of white powder. Kim Dolly was extremely frightened. It turned out that this was what the thief was looking for. After a while of searching, she found Nagong-ju, who was mentally exhausted. Faced with her continuing to make excuses, Kim Dolly took out the earring and confronted her. She used the excuse of breaking into a private home to call the police, but she remained calm. Because she herself was only suspended from her sentence and the museum would be involved in the white flower scandal. Kim Dolly was speechless. She also knew that the other party knew about her cousin using white flour. And the reason why Nagong-ju always hated Kim Dolly was because she was jealous of her noble birth and was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. At this time, the police had arrived in time to arrest Nagong-ju and take her to the police station to drink tea. After Kim Dolly discovered the white flour, she informed Gwanze, hoping that Gwanze would not reveal the news. On this side, Kim Dolly could not contact her brother Si-hyung. She thought that if the scandal was brought to light, she herself would not be able to protect the museum. Dolly felt very helpless. She went to the company and waited for Manhwa in the rain. The moment she saw Manhwa, she hugged him tightly to soothe her soul. Manhwa blamed Dolly for being too hasty because if they just waited for him to get off work, they would be able to meet, but she could not bear to wait any longer. I don't know why she ran to the company in the rain and hugged me in front of the staff. Dolly was embarrassed and Manhwa promised to help Kim Dolly protect the art museum together. At the police station, Nagongju was exercising her right to remain silent. The Guantan police were very angry, and he hated people who returned kindness with ingratitude. But she said that she shouldn't have been taken out of the service in the first place. Then Nagongju turned around and asked who saved her. It turned out that at that time, she didn't. I was in the quagmire of guilt. Nagongju was about to do something stupid when she saw Dolly on the screen, who had become famous at the same age, making her extremely jealous. She went to the museum to see Dolly's life, but was discovered by Kim Nakjong. Seeing her disheveled appearance, he not only invited her to do an internship, but also entrusted her to help solve everything. When he learned the truth, Nagongju burst into tears and collapsed on the chair. On this side, Manhwa had received the investigation report from the secretary of the list of people who secretly bought the museum's land. He ordered the secretary to personally deliver the list to Dolly, but the secretary advised him to reconsider. Manhwa said that although he loved money very much, he felt a foul smell here. He did this not only for the group but also to protect his father, brother, and the company. The secretary hoped that Dolly would not disappoint Manhwa's expectations. Although others say he only cares about money, she respects him very much, because he relies on his own efforts. He takes care of everything everywhere, based on his true abilities to get to this point. Dolly was very moved when she received the list. She began to publicly report on Congressman and Sang Tae. The incident caused a fierce reaction after being reported. Tae-jin learned that it was Dolly who reported him and began to ponder. Kim Dolly told Manhwa that a successful report was not the end but the beginning because she had provoked the scary character above. At this time, Congressman and Sang Tae saw the big character behind him, and this person was Tae-jin. Sitting in the car, the two began to plan their next move. After dinner, Manhwa invited Dolly to sleep at his house. Seeing Dolly's surprise, he quickly explained that he simply wanted to be by her side and promised not to touch a single finger of her. Dolly said that since he didn't do anything, why didn't he go home to sleep and hope that he would adjust his mentality. When he was mentally prepared, he would tell her. Manhwa was afraid of missing the opportunity and quickly said that he was physically and mentally prepared and then immediately went home to clean up. Dolly stood to one side happily while Manhwa hurriedly started to take a shower, clean the house, make the bed and change clothes in one breath. Hearing a knock on the door, the person who appeared before his eyes was Chuk-hai. Dolly also happened to be downstairs and the three of them stood looking at each other. Chuk-hai went straight into Manhwa's house, making Dolly unhappy. Seeing his girlfriend angry, Manhwa didn't know what to do. He asked Chuk-hai about the wound on her face. Chuk-hai lied that she was injured when she was kicked in the supermarket. Chuk-hai then rudely kicked her feet on the table, making Manhwa agitated, and Dolly looked at her angrily. After receiving the order, Manhwa wanted to chase Chuk-hai away, but he was kicked out himself. Manhwa was helpless and finally slept with the guards on the floor. Seeing Chuk-hai sleeping on Manhwa's bed, Dolly was jealous and lay on top of them, pulling each other's legs. In the middle of the night, Dolly heard Chuk-hai secretly crying. It turned out that the scar on her face was caused by her father beating her. Because she heard that her father had harmed Manhwa, she hurriedly went to ask. As a result, her father not only beat her but also scolded her for being useless. She was scared and had no choice but to seek refuge in Manhwa. Manhwa tried to persuade Chuk-hai to go home, but she did nothing. She told Manhwa to expose her father's scandal and keep her for a few more days. Only then did Manhwa learn that Chuk-hai was beaten because of her. Dolly drew graffiti on the wall of Manhwa's office, which was a picture that his stepmother had asked someone to draw for him. Manhwa asked her what good symbol the duck in the painting had. Dolly thought it represented the love between husband and wife. Manhwa was embarrassed. Dolly continued to say that they usually formed a pair and were not alone. Only then did he realize that his stepmother was cursing him to never get married in his life. Luckily, Dolly drew another female duck for him, making Manhwa unable to hold back his smile. In the art room, Dolly heard Mr. Hong say that she and Manhwa were a perfect match. Sabong was afraid that Dolly would not be happy, but Kim Dolly thought that Manhwa was excellent. She had profound knowledge and appearance, but she still looked like a gentleman, so she herself was not as good as him. The staff member was too modest, making Kim Dolly a little embarrassed. The lawyer gave Kim Dolly the real estate tax notice, and saw that the amount was more than expected. So the lawyer advised Kim Dolly to ask the elders to help her. But Kim Dolly's uncle suddenly returned home and revealed to the reporters that Kim Dolly was not their bloodline. To be exact, she was just Kim Nakjong's adopted daughter. The security guards who watched the video burst into laughter. At this time, they were preparing to use Kim Dolly's cousin to use public opinion to attack the art museum. Unexpectedly, God was also helping him when an adopted daughter dared to oppose them. Hearing this, Tae-jin was very excited and ordered the counselor and Sang-tae to stop immediately. The scene turned back to a girl staring intently and the painting of Sang-grove silently crying. Kim Nakjong thought that the one-eyed monster in the painting scared the little girl and said he would help her beat her. The girl quickly stopped him and said sadly that she was pitiful because no one loved her like she did. Hearing this, the manager hugged the little girl. Only then did the nuns running over know that the girl could speak. After that moment, the kind manager decided to adopt the little girl. In order to increase property taxes, Kim Dolly helplessly prepared to sell some famous paintings in his personal collection. Because if he could not pay the money, the museum would be at risk of being auctioned off. Kim Dolly's uncle suddenly appeared in front of everyone to stop this action without paying attention to Kim Dolly. He also blamed her for selling their property without permission. Through this meeting, the uncle taught her to be ungrateful and not even know that her father was sick. Hearing this, Dolly burst into tears. He also mentioned his brother who never bowed to anyone in his life, but had to kneel to others, because of Dolly. Kim Dolly was surprised to hear that and cried even louder. He told her to give up the museum to him and then took her away. Kim Dolly remembered Tae-jin's proposal to break up that year. At that time, she also tried her best to keep Tae-jin. But Tae-jin said that then she should reincarnate as the Kim family's daughter. Hearing that, Dolly also let go of his hands. After Eui Chul publicly announced that Dolly was an adopted daughter, Tae-jin and Gwon Tak searched everywhere to find Dolly's whereabouts, fearing that she could not bear the pressure. However, Dolly was now kneeling in front of her father's grave, crying, saying that her father was now her only support. Manhwa only found out about the situation Dolly was facing after finishing the food tasting. After Manhwa's family learned that Dolly was an adopted daughter, the stepmother immediately said that although the Kim family was a wealthy family, they could not marry an adopted daughter. Hearing this, Manhwa's father was a little moved. Dolly returned to the art institute, not wanting to see anyone. She deliberately avoided Manhwa who was looking for her everywhere, but when Manhwa was about to leave, she appeared again. Manhwa said that she had made him very worried and then explained her relationship with Eui Chul. Dolly was a little surprised when she heard this. She asked Manhwa if she had seen the news today. Manhwa did not pay much attention and thought that this was just a small matter. Manhwa comforted her that his brother was not related to him by blood, but they were still siblings. Manhwa held Dolly's hand and comforted her that life had many impermanent things. There was a successful father who was always respected by society, but his son beat his daughter. There are also father and daughter couples who live in harmony, including sons who change their surnames because they want to become rich. There are also daughters like her who come into his life because of their fathers. There are many types of father-daughter relationships in this world, not just biological fathers and daughters. He said that and did not forget to joke that a beautiful girl like her does not look like the director at all. At the same time, Tae-jin also came to the art museum and accidentally saw Manhwa and Dolly cuddling. He immediately flew into a rage and called into tea and started to carry out the plan as planned. The scene changed to Manhwa who had just made a mistake and timidly walked in front of Dolly and begged her to forgive him. It turned out that in the meeting earlier, Manhwa had argued fiercely with the staff because of the art museum's profits. Seeing Dolly so angry, he was a bit scared and said that in the future, he would think carefully before acting. At this time, Dolly's eyes softened a little, then she applied some moisturizer to Manhwa's lips, and the two of them rushed to kiss. The more Sabong thought about it, the angrier she became. She was afraid that Manhwa would find out that the museum director was an adopted daughter, and that she would make things difficult for her. Therefore, she did not use the secretary's interference to rush in. Dolly heard the noise and pushed him away. When everyone pushed the door open and rushed in, she repeatedly punched Manhwa in the face. Then she loudly begged him to apologize to Sabong. Everyone rushed over to stop the fight. After Manhwa calmed down, she softly apologized to Sabong. In the end, everyone was at peace with each other. However, a piece of pork was naturally met by someone, and everyone was eating it with all their might. At this time, the TV suddenly broadcasted the news of Sihyo. He said that Dolly's father had been using white flour for a long time, and then used art to sell drugs. Dolly was furious when he heard that, and the police scolded him for not being worthy of being a human being. What he did was like pouring dirty water on the museum director who had gone to court. But this was also in Sang Tae and Tae-jin's plan. Sihyo took out a video as evidence. Inside the video was a broken round needle that was pouring a drawing, and inside was a stack of yellow paper. Before Sihyo could leave the police station, Dolly was already furious. She slapped him fiercely and then cursed him as a gentleman. Yu-chun saw the news on TV and didn't know what his son had done. While he was about to call his son to settle the score, Tae-jin came and got the evidence. Broken Round Needle had used the museum as a cover to trade white flour for a few years, but he did not believe what he said. Tae-jin said that the truth was not important, but the important thing was that the museum was facing a huge hidden danger. Therefore, he absolutely could not ignore it. And Sang on this side went to meet the car dealer and the car dealer, then he made an attractive condition. He wanted the two of them to testify to the police. In the Delhi Art Museum, they were still unable to contact the two of them. After the artists learned that the museum had bad news, they immediately came to demand to take the works back. The police, receiving orders from their superiors, immediately appeared at the museum and then ordered an investigation. Looking at the deserted museum, Dolly was heartbroken and knelt down on the floor crying. Manhwa ran over and happened to witness this scene. He was heartbroken and hugged Dolly, not knowing how to comfort her for a moment. On this side, Manhwa's brother didn't eat or drink and just lay in bed. It turned out that Manhwa had secretly given the list to Dolly, so Sang Tae no longer trusted him. Manhwa's father started calling him by his old surname and didn't acknowledge the son. The stepmother was extremely angry and ran to the museum to find Dolly, demanding to beat her up. Luckily, Tae-jin happened to arrive in time and chased her out, saying that he would make her pay. Tae-jin pretended to be kind and comforted Dolly, saying that he would always stand behind her to prove her father's innocence. Tae-jin went to Manhwa's company and warned him to stay away from Dolly. He then mentioned that Dolly was bullied by her stepmother and scolded Manhwa. After returning home, Manhwa questioned her stepmother why she did that. Hearing that, she stammered that she only grabbed her hair. Manhwa angrily cursed her and her father angrily slapped Manhwa. Because of this, Manhwa was heartbroken and decided that from today on, the two of them would have nothing to do with each other. Today, Dolly stared at her phone, waiting for Manhwa's call. She thought about what her uncle had said to her this morning and his attitude had changed. Then he angrily tore up the documents, cried, and begged Dolly to save the family. He hoped that she would start over with Tae-jin. Dolly walked back in confusion and accidentally met Manhwa. Manhwa looked at Dolly's wounds, which his stepmother had caused. He couldn't help but approach her, but Dolly avoided him. He promised that from now on, such things would not happen again. Dolly ended the conversation tiredly, and Manhwa was helpless, so he could only go buy tonics and hang them on her door. Early the next morning, Manhwa wholeheartedly prepared breakfast for Dolly. Seeing Tae-jin about to approach Dolly, he quickly stopped her. Manhwa invited Dolly to his car, but in the end, Dolly still chose to leave with Tae-jin. That scene made Manhwa extremely heartbroken. Tae-jin took Dolly to the art museum of the Century Group and hoped that she would take responsibility for managing it. Dilly mentioned that she had gone to meet Yu-chun, then Tae-jin started to apologize to her. Since the meeting with her at the Buddhist ceremony that day, he knew that in his life, he only needed one woman like her. It was only because of the broken engagement 5 years ago that he still deeply regretted it. Because of the difficult situation of the company, he was forced to break up with her. He hoped that Dilly could give him another chance to protect her. Sabong and Bai in this car still did not want to betray their love, so they went to the police station together without an appointment. Then they told the story of Insang Tae buying dozens of them to give evidence that was unfavorable to Dilly's father to the police. They started comparing the painting in Si Hyum's video with the painting that had been recently searched for. Sabong felt that the two paintings were not very similar. At this time, Na Gongyu had just arrived at the police station. When she was a receptionist, Si Hyum was a regular customer of the restaurant. Later, when she worked at the art museum, he recognized her at first sight. That was why he often threatened her and even used fake paintings to mix porridge with real paintings. But that time was different because the painting that Dilly's father had discovered the medicine inside was fake. After filming the video, he told Na Gongyu to bring out the real painting. Only then did the judge understand that Si Hyum's purpose was to film the video of Dilly's father finding the medicine. Dilly returned to the art museum to work. The two managers, Sabong and Bai would tell Kim Dilly the truth about leaving. Dilly understood their pain and at the same time, she also made a major decision. She was preparing to transfer the right to organize the exhibition to another art museum. For the sake of the museum's profits as well as to pay off the debts, the Dun Dun Company had no choice but to make a difficult choice. These words were just heard by the two chefs of the Dun Dun Company. The art museum probably had to say goodbye to Manhwa. Manhwa was extremely upset because Dilly did not even pay attention to her. Ms. Th, the secretary, couldn't bear it and took him to the restaurant to advise him. The secretary felt that Manhwa and Tae-jin were very similar and had a very strong competitive edge. Antoine's appearance was rich and had a high survival ability. After listening to the secretary's words of comfort, Manhwa wanted to bury himself even more. He left in a daze. After a long while of thinking, Manhwa prepared to leave the Dun Dun Company. His brother and father, who were in charge of building the company, were still scooping up Dun Dun's potatoes in his hands. His brother knew that he was doing it for Dilly, so he repeatedly told him not to provoke Tae-jin. Manhwa bluntly said that he was the one standing above the tea, which was Tae-jin. Hearing this, his brother was panicked and quickly denied it. Tae-jin bought a unique ring. The information was just posted on the internet, and people immediately speculated that he was about to get married. The chef of the Dun Dun Company was worried for Manhwa. If it was possible to easily rearrange the relationship with him, at this time the two of them could not meet again, then what? Hearing that, Manhwa was extremely angry, he was furious and rushed into the museum to question Dilly. Why did she unilaterally decide to rearrange the relationship with him? Manhwa did not understand why Dilly suddenly changed her attitude. Dilly had gone through recent events and thought about how she had underestimated the importance of that amount of money, more than 36 billion, to him. Thinking about Manhwa, who had worked hard since she was young, using her small hands to earn each and every note, she felt extremely heartbroken. So she felt like his money was a bit more difficult. Manhwa asked her if it was because of Tae-jin's proposal, but Dilly immediately denied it. Manhwa did not care about that money at all and said that without his permission, there was no way she could run away. After saying that, he angrily left, leaving everyone stunned. Seeing Manhwa's back as she walked away, the staff didn't expect that someone who loved money so much would suddenly refuse to accept the money. Manhwa's father criticized his brother for not playing his trump card, so all the investments were about to be blown away. His brother had endured for too long, so in a fit of anger, he honestly told his father everything. This time, Manhwa's father smiled and explained, but his attitude immediately changed 360 degrees. He opened his mouth and called his son very intimately. On this side, Dilly took the bus to meet the author in Sazoi district. Tae-jin advised her to marry him. At that time, Dali refused him with certainty. Tae-jin then revealed his true face and said that he no longer had enough patience. No matter what, Dali would marry him, which made Dali extremely upset. She put on her headphones to ease her uncertain mood and fell asleep again. This time, she guessed that it was Dali's love group. Dali had met her little boy. Dali told her, "It's nothing, I'm dead." 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 Dali was about to go back to her room when Manhwa held her back and the drywood caught fire. When Manhwa made breakfast, he couldn't hide his joy. Dali woke up and crawled to the foot of the bed, embarrassed, where she had just gotten her clothes. Manhwa happened to see this scene and saw Dali's adorable appearance. Then there was the love scene. During breakfast, Manhwa mentioned that before investing, he had gone to survey the art museum in the river. Manhwa expressed that he was very happy to give the museum some money as long as they paid according to the bank interest and on time. Dali's father also had a good impression of him. Before leaving, he asked him if he had a girlfriend because he wanted to introduce his daughter to him. Manhwa thought to himself that her appearance was really unbearable. Dali's father wanted to show him her photo, but Manhwa was scared inside and quickly lied that he preferred to meet naturally. Hearing Manhwa's description, Dali understood that his father really liked Manhwa. Manhwa was so overwhelmed with love that she couldn't hide her happiness. He then rewarded the staff for their efforts, which was very confusing to everyone. After hearing him call her honey, the staff were even more surprised to the point of dropping their jaws. Manhwa was so immersed in love that he kept texting Dali. At that moment, Dali was so embarrassed that she couldn't help but stop the meeting. She read each message filled with Manhwa Dali's feelings and couldn't help but laugh out loud. When she picked up his call, he acted spoiled and said that he missed her and wanted her to kiss him. The staff who were eavesdropping immediately felt disgusted and couldn't listen anymore. On this side, Dali lovingly made smacking noises at him, and Manhwa immediately felt so sweet that she melted. When they got home, Dali carefully prepared potato cakes for everyone. The moment he put the cake in their mouths, both of them turned to stone. Manhwa and Kwon-tak both pushed each other to eat more. Then Kwon-tak asked why Manhwa taught Dali like this, which made Manhwa very upset. It turned out that Dali had changed the basic recipe that Manhwa taught her and added some of her own secret. She hoped that after eating it, they would become healthier, causing the two to cry without tears. In the end, the cake-eating scene ended in a forced manner. The three of them sat on the rooftop, discussing the case of Dali's cousin Si-hyung. After being arrested, he kept his mouth shut and refused to say anything, he just wanted to see Tae-jin. Dali remembered the time she went to see Tae-jin. When he opened the video on his phone, she clearly heard her father's voice. Manhwa suddenly asked when Dali heard the video and when her brother answered the phone. At the same time, the case of Counselor A accepting bribes led to Don Don being investigated. Tae-jin forced Don Don into a dead end, causing his brother to feel very panicked. In his hand, he held Tae-jin's weak point, preparing to use it to threaten him. On this side, Junzae also mentioned Si-hyung's matter. He had cried in front of his father before, admitting that he was not worthy to be a human being, that he had harmed his kind uncle. Finally, the clues came together. The more they thought about it, the more scared they became. After his son's matter, his uncle also thought more openly. He decided to leave the two financial groups to Dali to take charge of, and he only came to say goodbye to her. If he had decided to leave the group to Dali to decide, he hoped that she could help the museum overcome this storm. On this side, Tae-jin was caught with his weak point, and was extremely angry. He started to attack Manhwa's brother. The secretary secretly followed Manhwa's instructions, installed a GPS tracker on his car, and then followed behind. On this side, Dali went to the prison to visit her cousin. She came to ask if it was true that he had harmed her father. Hearing her say that, her cousin still did not argue and denied. Dolly painfully told him that this was his last chance to be a human being. Si-hyung now regretted telling everything. It turned out that in the past, Counselor had advised the museum manager to give up that land early, but the manager did not agree. Seeing him refuse so strongly, Counselor went to Si-hyung again. He wanted him to use the story of his uncle smoking to threaten him and record a video of him looking for drugs. At this time, Tae-jin came before him and threatened him to show the museum's red book. Hearing this, the manager suddenly realized that everything was Tae-jin's plot. After discovering the truth, his illness relapsed and he fell to the ground in pain. Si-hyung was worried about his uncle, so he went to find medicine for him, but Tae-jin stopped him and reminded him that he did not agree. In other words, he wanted to wait for him to go to the altar, to watch the naked chicken, and then get the museum as easy as carrying a hand. But all of them happened to be found by Manhwa's brother, who came to find the manager and filmed it. After learning the truth about Dolly's suffering, Manhwa's brother here asked Tae-jin to meet to make a deal. Tae-jin brought the Dun group to join the Century group. He told him not to worry about Dun being investigated because this matter would be destroyed due to lack of evidence. The brother who heard the poem finally gave the video to Tae-jin. He also patted his shoulder to show that the two of them were friends, while Tae-jin only felt disgusted with him. The two men received Tae-jin's order and wanted them to test Manhwa's brother. At this time, Manhwa had just arrived when she received a call from Dolly. She felt lucky to have him accompanying her during such a painful time. Manhwa was about to leave when she saw her brother happily holding the documents. He had no idea that he was being tailed by two thugs. They were about to attack him when Manhwa rushed over with a fire extinguisher. The guards standing in the nearby parking lot heard the scuffle and rushed over. During the struggle, Manhwa was stabbed in the stomach. When the guards arrived, the two thugs had escaped and Manhwa immediately fell to the ground. When Dolly received Manhwa's call, she immediately ran to the hospital. Her brother was sitting outside the operating room while Manhwa was injured to the blood vessels in her spleen and fell unconscious. When his father heard this, he could no longer stand and her brother finally realized how stupid he was. Manhwa's father was furious when he saw Dolly appear. He asked her to leave immediately and put all the blame on her. "If it weren't for you, would my son have offended the world?" He then begged Dolly to leave Manhwa quickly. Hearing this, Dolly suddenly burst into tears. She sat there, dumbfounded, waiting for Manhwa to wake up. Manhwa was finally pushed out of the emergency room, but Dolly could only stand and watch him from afar. Manhwa woke up and saw Dolly. He looked at everyone as Dolly. The secretary immediately told her that Manhwa's surgery was successful. She looked at the stuffed duck on the bed, which was a gift that Manhwa had specially given her. The flashback to the sweet moments between the two of them made Dolly feel uneasy, was silent. Then the older brother went to Manhwa's office to get his USB. After regretting, the older brother decided to release the original video online. It was clearly recorded that Tae-jin had provoked the museum manager to become ill, then he stopped Si-hyung from saving him. The official was heartbroken when he saw this scene. On this side, Tae-jin was thinking of a way to solve everything. Dolly couldn't wait to visit, but was unexpectedly stopped by Tae-jin. He sweetly said that her father's eternal departure was just an accident. Then he confessed that his love was all sincere. Dolly criticized him for being a shallow person, then leisurely went to the hospital. Manhwa saw that Dolly was about to arrive, so she prepared herself. Seeing Manhwa's weak appearance, Dolly checked his wound, then she painfully hugged him. That night, after being persuaded by Manhwa, she decided to sleep in the hospital. After the storm had passed, the two wanted to travel together to a faraway land. Then Manhwa kept on coaxing Dolly to sleep with her. Having agreed to his request, the two of them slept together that night. At this moment, Manhwa's father suddenly appeared in front of the hospital room and witnessed the whole sweet scene. While Manhwa was still in a deep sleep, Dolly had already woken up and quietly left. She had just gone out into the hallway when she saw Manhwa's father sitting there in a daze. Only then did he dare to tell her the real reason. Manhwa's brother was the one who personally recorded the video of Taejin's accusation that was shown on the bulletin board. However, instead of reporting to the police, he took advantage of that video to secretly make a deal with Taejin. After Dolly's father went to court, the whole family had no face to look her in the eye. Manhwa's father knew that once he had climbed high, he had to accept a painful fall. He didn't want that, so he hoped Dolly would return to the world that belonged to her. After being told the truth, Dolly cried her eyes out. Time flies, a year has passed in the blink of an eye. Now Manhwa's health has completely recovered. That day, while sitting in a luxury car on the way to the company, Manhwa accidentally saw Dolly sitting in the car opposite. The moment he saw the face he had been thinking about day and night, Manhwa couldn't believe his eyes. In his mind, he kept thinking that maybe he had a prodigal son syndrome. After going through so many storms together, the art museum in the river has finally become an ideal destination for young people. To prepare for the upcoming exhibition, all the employees in the company are so busy that they are all in a panic. With the addition of Princess Han, everyone's spirit of overcoming difficulties is even stronger. That day, because there was still important work to be done, Dolly asked permission to return early. Seeing that she had just returned to the country but was busy with her own work, everyone was surprised and looked at her in surprise, probably because she wanted to invite everyone to a party to celebrate Dolly's return. Who would have thought that their destination would be Manhwa's potato soup shop? It was even more surprising when they arrived and saw Manhwa also there. The moment their eyes met, Manhwa and Dolly could only silently look at each other. After regaining their composure, Manhwa turned around and left without even paying attention to Dolly's face. He turned around and went back to the kitchen to continue his work, leaving everyone there to continue gossiping. That night, Manhwa returned to the cold house in a dejected mood. Looking at the duck painting that he had been staring at for so long, Manhwa kept muttering. When did she return to Korea without even telling me? On this side, Dolly was also intently looking at the phone. She was also waiting for Manhwa to contact her. Under the heavy pressure of public opinion, Taejin finally had to resign. After the final resentment in his heart, Manhwa could not bear it any longer. The next day, he and his secretary went to the art museum where Dolly was working. As soon as he arrived at the office, Manhwa wanted to discipline the staff. This time, he came here to regain his role as a debt collector. Seeing that the situation seemed quite tense, the staff immediately ran away but was stopped by Dolly. The museum meeting had not ended yet, so Dolly frankly invited Manhwa out. Angry, he immediately demanded back the gold watch with 4 nines that he had given her when he was in the Netherlands. Seeing that, Dolly immediately rolled up his sleeve to reveal the huge watch. While cleaning the house in the Netherlands, Dolly accidentally saw it. Knowing that there was nothing left to quibble with her in front of Manhwa, he pulled Dolly's hand and dragged her out. He really didn't understand why she had returned to the country but couldn't call him. Because he was so angry, he decided to change their ambiguous relationship. Without letting Dolly think too much, Manhwa immediately knelt down and proposed to her. Because it was rumored that men were not allowed to kneel before anyone but their wives, he wasn't too shy. Understanding Manhwa's sincerity, Dolly agreed immediately and always to make it hot. After receiving Dolly's nod, the two immediately gave each other a passionate kiss, like a banana fish. The audience on the side also continuously cheered for the sweet love of the two. A year ago, when Manhwa's father begged Dolly to return to his own world and spare his son, Dolly did not agree. Between the two of them, there was only 5-woman love, no matter how high or low the level. Two people in love will definitely come together, no matter how many storms and obstacles they face. Dolly and Manhwa truly love each other, so she hopes that his father will agree to marry them both. Because she really cannot bear to leave him even for a second or a minute. Hearing this, Manhwa's father suddenly felt moved, and he did not want to interfere in the love of the young couple anymore. The next episode is over. Thank you for watching. If you find it interesting, please leave a like and subscribe to support our team. Now, goodbye and see you again in the next videos. Today's episode ends here. Thank you for watching. Now, goodbye and see you again.